to receive and send API messages. In some of the modules, when you load the module, you will see the API option here. This means that there is a Swagger interface for you to use and understand how the API's endpoint works for this particular module. The Swagger interface looks a bit like this, where you can see the endpoints you have, adding, deleting, listing things, data schemas is all basically explained in here. You can also authenticate yourself with your API credentials, and you can test your endpoints and your payloads directly in here. Now, you won't see APIs all around the software, but most of the key modules do have the APIs enabled. To make API calls, you need to have a user account. That means that you need to go to Settings, User Management, and create an account that has a special API flag enabled. So when you create an account, it has to be a local account, and the REST API must be enabled. You also need to look at the authorization. So you need to have the right permissions to work on the module that you want to query with APIs. This is the same as any other user account in eramba. You can also send notifications out. And the way you do that is through notifications. The reason for that is because notifications in eramba are defined on every module, and they can trigger emails or REST APIs. There's two types of notifications that work with this system: the comments and attachments and the warning notification. When someone puts a comment or an attachment anywhere in eramba, you can send a notification, and you do that by creating this particular notification. If I go to new, you will say whenever a new comment is or comment and attachment, I want to send an email notification. Instead of sending an email, you can go and select a webhook, and this will allow you to send a REST call to whatever endpoint you want. Nowadays, it's quite common that instead of sending emails, when someone puts a comment attachment, you just send a Slack message. The other type of notification that can trigger REST APIs is the warning notification. And the warning notification has two main types of actions. One of the actions works against a deadline. So many things in eramba have a deadline. Controls must be tested, risk must be reviewed, policies must review, project has deadlines. Pretty much anything in eramba has a deadline. And what people do in eramba is they create a notification, a warning notification that will trigger based on that deadline. So for example, 1 day before, 20 days before, 1 day after, and so on. Same applies in here. If you don't want to send an email and you want to set a webhook, you can do that by simply enable this thing and configuring your webhooks. As you configure the webhook, remember, you can also test the results. So by clicking here on test, you will see what comes back from the message. The other type of notification that triggers webhooks is a warning notification again, but it's not the warning notification based on the deadline, is this one here, which is called dynamic status change. This notification triggers based on dynamic statuses. Now, you need to go through the documentation and understand a little bit more what they are, but basically dynamic statuses are in every module in eramba, and you can see them on the first column of your filters. They will always be there, and it's this column in here. They trigger based on rules that you define on your own. So here, you can define your own dynamic statuses, and there's many ways on how you can create them. I'm going to edit one of them so you see how flexible the conditions are. There's many options on how to create your dynamic statuses. Now, when this dynamic status switches on and off, you can send a notification. Again, you go to notification, warning, and you select that special notification called dynamic status change. What you will do is, again, you will select a webhook, not an email, and then you will select which dynamic status you want to use for this notification. So when this thing will switch on, a webhook will be sent. When it switches off, again, it can also happen that you can send a REST API. So as you see, there's different ways on how you can send notifications out, and using dynamic status, you can even create your own conditions to trigger them out. All this allows you to create the automation that you want in order to simplify your GRC.